here in the fall. And part of the listeners, if you do follow me on Facebook and you decide that you want to be a subscriber, then I have the audiobook for free that I'm going to send only to the subscribers. So that is my special gift to you.
Thank you very much for that. So take us through the genesis of this. You mentioned there's a diagnosis. So what did the doctors say? What was going on with you way back when?
Well, when I was younger, up until the point where I was about 4 years old, I was a tiny, tiny child. I was like my dad, always lots of energy, never wanted to eat. They had trouble getting me to gain weight. And then all of a sudden, when I started school about 7 years old, they started noticing that I started gaining weight, but yet I had these skinny arms and legs and this big pregnant belly. The kids would make fun of me, jumping rope and, oh, here comes Heidi. And are you pregnant? How did you get pregnant at 9, Heidi? And I would go home and I would cry and cry and cry. And finally, I was living with my grandparents, and my mom was a nurse. But both of my parents were gone, obviously, since I was sent to live with my grandparents. So they decided to take me to the doctor on their own. And they got a diagnosis that I was hypothyroid. And that was the reason why I was tired all the time, why I was gaining weight even though I wasn't eating, why I was having memory loss, dry skin, just all kinds of different symptoms that I couldn't get rid of. I went to finally got the diagnosis and they got me on the medicine. When they did get me on the medicine, it was too high of a dose. So they sent me to the hospital and I had to have a spinal tap and have all that fluid drained off. And so they finally got my medicine regulated and got me on a good dose and got me back in school. But still, it took time to lose that weight. It still took time to get over that trauma. And just starting that in grade school and going to school with people that have known you your whole life. You stayed in the same town your whole life. You get teased no matter if you lose 60 pounds, you're still the fat girl.
I look at like the childhood for a lot of people who are overweight, and it is quite difficult because they get bullied and they get picked on, right? Like
Right.
because you stand out. It's not like you can hide your size. Like I know some people try their best with baggy clothes and loose fitting clothing, but I think for a lot of women, because women tend to wear more fitted clothing, you start to stand out. And as you mentioned, right, like they were teasing you and saying that, oh, how did you get pregnant at such a young age because of your
Right.
stomach and things like that. And I remember there was a time where I was bullied a little bit in school, and a lot of people thought that it was like your trial, meaning that you had to go through this to survive school because everybody goes through it. But speak to us about how it felt to be singled out because of your size. And it's something that you necessarily can't hide in a lot of ways.
It was very lonely. I had a very small group of friends that I can say I still have to this day because we were kind of like the group of oddballs of the school. We were the nerds, we were the fat kids, the people that just didn't fit into with the cheerleaders and the jocks and everybody else. So we found support amongst each other. But for the most part, going to school, I would beg my grandparents and eventually my mom, just please don't make me go to school today because it was just torture every single day. Every single day, I knew matter what I did, what I wore, how I spoke, what makeup I did, how I did my hair, how I walked down the hallway. It didn't matter what I was going to do. They were still going to make fun of me because I was an open target to them. I allowed it to happen so many times, and I never stood up for myself, and I never said no.
The kids that go through bullying, they feel so powerless like you, right? Like you go into school and it's supposed to be a place where you're very social, you're very young, and it's the time of your life, right? And here you are not wanting to go to school, right? Were there times where you felt like you just didn't belong in this world?
There have been many times when I felt I just didn't belong in this world. I mean, especially in high school, I felt I didn't belong there because I wasn't tall, I wasn't thin, I wasn't one of the pretty girls or the cheerleaders. There have been times when, even when I was in church, I grew up in church in a Pentecostal church of all things where we were taught, that we're to be soft spoken and that we're, not to beautify ourselves, that we are to down ourselves. And it took me leaving that atmosphere to realize that I was being controlled and manipulated, that we were created, if we're supposedly created in God's image, then that's a beautiful thing. And we want to be able to have self-love for ourselves. And being in church, even people made fun of me in church because people are people no matter where you go. People are going to make fun of you at church. They're going to make fun of you at high school. They're going to make fun of you at work. And I think it takes a strong character just to say, you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't matter to you. You don't matter to me. So let's just go on and agree to disagree.
One of the ways that
I
I
mean,
was able to overcome that, sorry to interrupt you, was I had to find a way to love myself
yeah,
outside of what the type of love I wanted for other people. I look back at high school, especially because middle school was a little bit different. I look at high school, especially because your body is changing in so many different ways because many of us are going through puberty at that time, right? Now kids go through puberty at like 1 years old, right? Right. But back then it was a little bit different. I look at some of what the men and women are going through, and just having your body change because of puberty opened you up to ridicule. But if you add in the fact that you're overweight, which is still to this day viewed in a negative light, right? Like you look at online, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you look at like online dating, right? And a lot of men are like, if you're going to ask us how tall we are, we need to ask you how much you weigh, right? Because they look at weight as such a turnoff, even though they can still be attractive in their own way or
right.
attractive to other people, right? Like a preference is a preference, but I don't think we should bully someone or put them down because of their preference. And I wonder how many people end up with thoughts of self deleting or maybe causing themselves harm because of what they went through as a child. So, for your childhood, were there times where you had dark thoughts or you had experiences where you didn't know where it was going to take you in the future?
Oh, there were definitely times I had dark thoughts, and it's why I had to start writing because it was something that I would dream about at night because I would try and hide it because of the type of family that I grew up in. I didn't want them to know about that I dreamt about, that I wanted to hurt myself because I was so sad. And people just kept making me go to school. They didn't understand the torture that I was going through. So I started writing about it. And I found the more that I wrote about it, that the easier it kind of got because I got some of that poison out of me by writing and just kind of like, saying, this is what happened, this is how I felt about it, and this is what I'm going to do about it. It was kind of like an ABC thing for me, but writing was my biggest thing that brought me out of the dark spaces because um there are times in life, especially, when I got older and I was going through my first marriage trying to raise kids, and then that marriage didn't work. because of certain things happening. And now I'm a single mom raising two kids, one that has a disability. And the only thing that kept me going was my love for my kids. My love for my kids and my writing was my therapy. But
How much,
sometimes you have to look beyond yourself to find a reason for that.
how strong did you have to be to find the love of your children and the love of writing to get you out of that situation mentally and not and as well as physically?
I actually had a situation where, with my ex-husband, I was getting ready. We were in a physical altercation. The police had been called, and he had my youngest son and was trying to drag him through the yard and take him away. And I don't know what it was, but something just snapped in me and said, "Go get your kid. Do whatever you have to do to get your kid, get him, and keep him safe." And inside, I was shaking like a leaf from the inside. I was scared. I was petrified because this is a man who, when I look at him now, I laugh. I'm like, I was scared of that. I'm just like, man, that shows you how far I've come because I'm like, I look at that, my ex-husband now, I'm like, oh man, there's no way I'm scared of him now. But when I was going through it, I was like, this is God's fire getting ready to come down on me, and I'm trying to challenge it because I'm trying to take my kid back. But my kids were everything to me, especially my youngest kid, because he was the one that was with the disability that he didn't have a voice to tell his dad no. He didn't understand what was going on. He was scared and afraid himself.